Hi, everyone. Hello. I usually wear glasses, and I couldn't find my glasses this morning, so I just see faces. Hi. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us, on this nice day, actually, here in Iowa City. Again, thank you for joining us for Alvin Ailey Homecoming and the Black Midwestern Imagination. My name is Derek Nnuro, and I am the curator of special projects here at the Stanley Museum of Art. Because my job is self-evidently multivalent, my job title, in fact, is, people immediately ask me when I tell them what my job title is to, tell them about some of the most special of the special projects that I have undertaken here at the museum. And I have to say that in recent weeks, this conversation has been very much part of my answer. This is a conversation that we dreamed up with Hancher in conjunction with the show we have here at the Stanley Museum of Art titled It's a Fine Thing, which focuses on the Black Midwest, and it's supported by the Terra Foundation for American Art. The show opened on February 13th, and it's up until January 20th. So please, if you haven't already spent time upstairs with that show, please do so either after this conversation or later before it closes on July 20th. But in conjunction with that show, we are doing this NEA Big Read, which brings the Iowa City community together to read Toni Morrison's Beloved. And what that book does for us, it really gives us a historical context. The show is a bit contemporary. So we wanted a historical anchor, so that in addition to the show, we could also have a historical conversation about the origins of the Black Midwest. And this novel gives us the opportunity to do that. So I'm going to put a plug in for that as well. If you haven't already grabbed your free copy, we are handing out free copies of a book. And this is such a literary community, so I know you want a free copy of a book. So if you haven't already grabbed a free copy of Beloved, it looks like this, please, after this conversation, feel free to go up to our gallery host. It's a quick registration. It won't take you more than 30 seconds, and they will happily hand you a book. Please do get it while it's hot. I want to say a big thank you to Hancher Auditorium, to Andre, to you, Aaron, and the rest of your team. We tout, and rightly so, as an institution, we tout the specialness of the arts ecosystem here, and that is true, that is something for us to be proud of, but it's really made by the people, right? And what I have found in my collaborations with the other arts organizations here on campus is how much everybody is willing and ready to dream, right? How much everybody is willing and ready to dream. And this is what makes this place such a special place for the arts. So with that said, I would like to introduce Ronni and Ashley Howard, who will be in conversation this afternoon. Actually, before I begin, Ronni, welcome home. Welcome home. Welcome home to Iowa City. So for those of you who don't know, I'm gonna read Ronnie's official biography, and also I'll do that for Ashley as well. So Ronni Favors, for those of you who don't know again, began dancing as a child in Iowa City, Iowa. After studying at the National Music Camp in Interlochen, Michigan, where my cousin also went, actually. I was waiting for an opportunity to tell you that. On scholarship, he did too. She continued her training at the Ailey School as a fellowship student. Ronni was a member of Ailey II, Alvin Ailey American Dance Theater, the La Lubavitch Dance Company, and has received the Minon Art Award. She was the ballet instructor at the 1989 inaugural session of Ailey Camp in Kansas City, Missouri, where my wife currently lives. We have so many connections. And served as the artistic director of the camp. She's the founding director of Children's Aid Ailey Camp, New York, and provided guidance in the national implementation of the Ailey Camp program. In 1997, Ronni was named Assistant Rehearsal Director of Alvin Ailey American Dance Theater, and then was Rehearsal Director from 1999 to 2010. She rejoined as Rehearsal Director in 2019, and she's here with us in that capacity. Thank you, Ronni. Ronni will be in conversation with Ashley Howard. Dear, dear Ashley Howard. Ashley is an assistant professor of history and African American studies here at the University of Iowa. Her research interests include African Americans in the Midwest, the intersection between race, class, and gender, and the global history of racial violence. Her manuscript, Prairie Fires, Class, Gender, and Regional Intersections in the 1960s Urban Rebellions, analyzes the 1960s urban rebellions in the Midwest, grounded in the way race, class, gender, and region played critical and overlapping roles in defining resistance to racialized oppression. I know Ashley has a book coming out soon. So, Ashley, could you please tell us a little bit about that?
So I was like, oh gosh, I was like, books change names. So the book is coming out at the end of May, early June, and the new title is, and you'll know why once you hear the old one, or after you heard it, is Midwest Unrest. So like easy, direct, rhymes. So it's coming out on UNC Press either at the end of May or early June. So,
with an incredible cover.
You're too kind, thank you.
So please look out for that. I thought it was important for me to get the official title and not this old title. So thank you both. Thank you both. Again, thank you all for joining us. Without further ado, I'll hand it over to you all. Thank you.
And what a delight to be here on a sunny day with you. And, I have little note cards, which are just basically like conversation starters. So like if we were playing parlor games, these would be our prompts. And that is to ensure that I don't fully fangirl out, because I could totally go down that road. And I just want to say as a note, my dear Derek, although we have many, many things in common, one thing I don't, and I can't speak for you, but I think I can. One thing I'm surprised that we don't have in common is you only have a single pair of glasses.
We do have that in common.
Yes. As it stands now, I only have
Okay, you only have one?
No.
Okay.
I have like 6.
Same. And I was like, why didn't you just wear another pair? Don't you have all the colors?
But I have multiple sunglasses.
Okay. Well, okay. Anyway, on behalf of the audience gathered here, thank you for not wearing those inside. You don't have to be that guy. And so, there are so many things that bind us, and, just a love of art, a love of community, a love of this place. And I will say this very quietly, but many of you already know me, so it's not that quiet. I'm a very proud Black Midwesterner. I grew up in the Midwest. I did all of my education in the Midwest, with the exception of a brief period, which was joyous and parade-filled, confetti, great food in New Orleans. I have lived my entire life in the Midwest. But if we want to get technical with it, right, Louisiana Purchase, that can be a bit of a Midwest type of look. Whatevs.
Everybody wants to be in the Midwest all of a sudden.
Right? Well, we know why. But, I am a Nebraskan. Hockey signs my paychecks, right? This is very confusing for my children, because when we watch the game on Thanksgiving, they always say, oh, why do Grammy and Pop Pop hate Herky? Why are they always yelling at him? I was like, well, because they're going for the opposite team, right? And so this is such a joy to be in conversation with someone who reps just as hard, right, for the Midwest. And I've come to grow and love Iowa, even though I'm from across the river. But just to kind of think about these things. And so maybe just start at the beginning. What was it like growing up in Iowa City, and how did you come to be here?
Hi, friends. First I have to the Black Midwest was very intentional in my family, being Black in the Midwest. My parents are from the South. My mother's from Miami, Florida. My father's from Birmingham, Alabama. They met in college at Clark College in Atlanta. And my father, when he graduated, knew that he wanted to study speech pathology and audiology, and knew he wanted to come here, either here or Kansas, but here was better for a lot of reasons. But what I didn't find out until I was an adult was that, so he was eligible to, because he graduated in 1955, and so he technically was eligible to be able to go to the University of Alabama in Birmingham. It would be completely legal for him to go to the University of Alabama in Birmingham, but they did not want to integrate. And so there was a thing, I guess, that everybody knew about underground, that you could receive a stipend not to go to the school. We will pay you not to come to this school. We don't want to integrate, so we will give you money not to come here. And so my dad took the money and ran to Iowa City, and that's how I was born here, University Hospital. So it was very intentional. What's interesting is that I never knew this story until my brother, I have a brother that's much younger than I am, and he wrote a paper on his father for school, and this is when I first found out about it. And then also in talking with my mother about it a couple of weeks ago, I always thought that, at least in my brother's telling, that they just told him no and here's some money. But actually, it was by design that he applied there, because you still have to apply to the school and then hope and pray that they don't take you. So they were on tenterhooks for months, until the official word came that no, we don't want you here, and my dad's, yes. And, here we are. And I'm so grateful, because my life wouldn't be anything like what it is now if I had not grown up in Iowa City. Definitely if I'd grown up in Birmingham, Alabama, it would be nothing. I wouldn't have had any of the opportunities that I had growing up here. And Iowa City, as we all know, is just special, and so this is so we lived here for about 11 months, and then my dad finished up his part of his program. He needed to earn some money, and so racism was not prevalent, but there was, there were little pockets of it. And so, although, on paper, we hire everyone, but everybody always had to submit an application with your photograph on it. And so he got many, many rejections, for jobs. So finally, he was just desperate, because he had a wife and an 11-month-old child. And so he got on a bus and rode to Council Bluffs, Iowa, and pleaded with the superintendent of the Iowa School for the Deaf for a job. And the guy decided to take a chance on him. So my father became the audiologist for the school, as well as a counselor for the dorms. And because he chose the overnight shift, that meant that we qualified for faculty housing on the ISD campus. So I grew up, I spent my first 3 or 4 years of my life at Iowa School for the Deaf. And, excuse me. My father decided to come back here to pursue his doctorate. So we moved back to Iowa City when I was 7, in between second and third grade. And so that was kind of the rejoining.
And I mean, what I always find is that, when I went to college in Chicago, and the first thing people said was, "Oh my goodness, you're from Nebraska?" And I was like, "Yes." And they're like, "There are Black people in Nebraska?" I was like, "Yes." First you're looking at one, and second of all, it's not just me and my family. Have you ever heard of Malcolm X? Starting naming all these Gale Sayers, on and on and on. And so just this idea of that, where people are supposed to be and where they're supposed to belong, and this, this concept that you're supposed to flee, the first chance you get, you're trying to get out. And when I was reading about you and learning your story and just your life, you did an interview with Dance Magazine in 2022, and you were talking about how you train dancers, and it just resonated with me of how I live in this Midwestern space, right? And you said, so to be able to inhabit the greatest amount of space is something that we all really strive for, right? And so like, what does it mean to like inhabit space as a Black person coming of age in Iowa City? What did that allow you to do? How were you able to navigate and thrive in these spaces?
I think it was a very fortunate time that I grew up. In the late 50s, early 60s, where everything was changing. And, I was, in our earlier conversation, I was referring to myself as part of the assimilation generation. We were trying to, fit in and show that we were as good as, and that we could, hold up, that we could move into spaces. And so living in Iowa City in particular, because there were very few Black people here when I first came back, that for the most part, I was usually the first or one of the first Black people that anyone met. So in a way, it allowed me to drive the narrative about, who I was, how I wanted to move through the world, how I wanted to be considered as a person. My parents were, intellectuals, and I was never raised with the idea that I was less than, or even that I had to prove myself. And I guess also I have to admit, right, I have a giant ego.
It's a great thing.
So I never felt less than anyone about any. But I also had a lot of support as a kid. Like I was an early reader, so my kindergarten teacher would just kind of like trot me around the school and have me read to this group or that group, and I could sing. So I had the solo role in the Christmas pageant, and in first grade, my teacher kind of set aside a different curriculum from the rest of the class for me, and I would just sit up at her desk and do my own personal curriculum. And I was kind of a teacher's assistant, so I would help the other kids with their work of reading to them, or she would leave me in charge of the class when she wanted to go take a break, and I would just sit in the front of the room and read to the class. So it was an unusual growing up situation, but one that really contributed to my self-esteem. And all this was in Council Bluffs. And so then moving to Iowa City, was just like coming to nirvana, because Council Bluffs, it was near Omaha and a little gritty. And there was a sense of, like underlying, not danger per se, but just like a lack of safety. Like, one night my mother and I were at a drive-in restaurant, and some kids started, heckling her and us, and, it culminated in this car chase through town, for fun. It's for them to have some fun, chasing this woman and her daughter. I'm so glad they didn't catch us. I don't know what would have happened, but it was just sport. We were, they were on safari or something. And so, I kind of felt coming to Iowa City was going to be like this great release from all that, coming to the land of enlightenment where everyone was educated and everyone, was idealistic. And that is true. I really found that. But also, Iowa City was the first time I was ever called nigger to my face. And that was such a shock. We were staying actually on Oakland Avenue, across the street from Longfellow, and playing in the playground. We were just staying with some friends there until our housing was available. We lived at Mary Student Housing in Finkbine, which is now, I guess, part of the University of Iowa Hospital's campus, but it was huge, living in military-style barracks and Quonset huts and all that. And I went, but we were waiting for that to open, so we were staying with some friends there. And one night, playing on the monkey bars, and I was getting ready to just jump on, and some kid said, "Hey, no niggers allowed here," and I just, jumped off, and I was just shocked because I expected that in Council Bluffs, but not in Iowa City, and it totally threw me off about, how I was going to be able to move through life here. But I should back up that a couple of days before then, I'd met a girl, we became little friends, and we're little playground friends. And so after this incident happened, and my parents, we talked it through a little bit, but it was also clear that I knew I was going to have to take this on and try to get ahead of things here, that my parents were going to be able to protect me. And there was not a Black community that I could just, be absorbed into, that I was going to have to figure this out. I was going to have to figure Iowa City out. Anyway, fast forward a couple of days, and this little girl and I were still playing in the playground. She invited me over to make peanut butter cookies, because I'd never had peanut butter cookies before. So we got all the way through it. We made the batter, we did the thing, we made the fork, those fork marks on them. And
Very
we were putting
Midwestern.
and either putting them into the oven or taking them out of the oven, I don't know. But then I heard these steps on the stairs, and down the stairs comes the same kid, and he says, "Oh," and he couldn't get it out, and I dashed out the door. And the last thing I remember hearing is, this girl like, "Mom!" And it was just, so I just went back and quavered at our friend's house. Fast forward another couple of days, and this girl and I ran into each other at the playground again, and she forced me to come back to her house to have these cookies. We made these cookies, and we're gonna see this through. And I still choke up at the memory of that, because just this one 8-year-old kid with this like strong sense of justice, and it gave me such hope again. And it's so because it's two kids, same family, right, and two totally different behaviors, but it gave me hope that there is a way for me here, and that I could make a way, and so. That was really the only really horrific time I had here. The rest of the time I was here, I was fully embraced, and I had, I have some attributes that assisted me in that. I'm not anymore, but I was smart. I was athletic, but I also had a sense of humor, so I could kind of, find ways to smooth the path for myself. So I started off at Lincoln Elementary School, and then I went to Horace Mann, and I went to Central and City High. And from that time, I felt fully embraced, and it didn't feel like it was a thing, I was just, I'm definitely a different color, but that's kind of it. I'm not blonde. I'm not, able to really navigate through Iowa City. So it's a little bit tricky, because I did put a lot of effort into, I also felt a sense of mission about paving a way for Black people that were going to come after me, and that other people would not have any type of negative experience. That I felt like if we were kids and we could grow up together and just to see each other as people, then that these kid friends of mine would raise their kids differently. And so this was always kind of my driving force behind it, was kind of looking towards the future. But I think also part of it was. So part of that also made me, I wouldn't say deny parts of myself or deny my Blackness, but I certainly didn't play it up. And the way that our mass media portrayed Blacks was nothing like my parents. It's nothing like us. It's like caricatures of people with, very buffoonish, very uneducated. There was nothing that I could really see in popular culture that would make me want to say, yes, this is my people. We weren't portrayed in a very high light. Even people with great skills, I never knew that Louis Armstrong, for example, was like a musical genius. All we saw him on was like the Ed Sullivan Show and rasping and singing, Hello Dolly or something, but nothing about the groundbreaking work that he did in creating a whole new musical form. Or all these different, people who were sometimes erased. Like I was just watching a documentary about, I can't think of her name right now. Hazel Scott, yes. So thank you. Jocelyn, another childhood friend. But there just weren't role models for me to aspire to other than my parents until.
Well, and this is what I was going to say, you were training as a classical ballerina, right? And that was it. And that was all you thought. And then Alvin Ailey came to town and some things changed. Eventually, right? It wasn't your first time you saw it or even your second.
Yeah.
But eventually something clicked. So what was that transition? How did your mom bringing you there and introducing you to the company, how did it resonate differently when it finally did click for you?
Well, anybody that knows my mother knows that she's a very determined person. And so Hancher was just opening, and Alvin Ailey was on the program of the first year of programming at Hancher, along with the National Ballet of Canada, who was, Rudolf Nnuro was going to be a guest star with them, and the Joffrey Ballet, and so all the ballet companies were coming here, and my mother wanted me to go see Alvin Ailey, and I had no interest. It wasn't just Alvin Ailey. Modern dance was just, I have great tremendous gratitude for Marcia Thayer and the people that created the children's dance program at the University of Iowa, but I had no interest in modern dance. And at that time, it's kind of like taught imagine yourself a flower in the sun, and what would you do, and how would you move? And, I was not interested in that at all. I love the specificity of ballet. I'm a Virgo, so I'm very fussy and particular and persnickety, and, so the specificity of ballet and the intellectual rigor and, everything that went into it was just fascinating to me. And I had an amazing teacher, Tony Sostek, who really took an interest in me, and she was the one that just pushed and pushed and pushed me to become a dancer. She always scolded me after class about how lazy I was, and I didn't understand what she was talking about. It was like, I
don't believe it.
You told me to do the thing, you stick the leg out, I stuck the leg out. You told me to lift my arm, I left my arm, what's the problem? What is the problem? I did everything you said, and week after week, you're so lazy, why don't... So finally, what she did, she put me in a class that was about 2 levels above mine, so that I was gonna have to really work hard to keep up. And the other thing that was the true gift, that I don't think she planned this, but there was this other girl in the class. Her name is Sue Ann Soldowski. And this girl would rather have danced than breathed. She would just wanted to dance more than anything. And she worked like a dog. She was practicing before class, she was practicing after class, she was always striving. And watching her as the example of what my teacher kept talking about really opened my eyes. Oh, I'm supposed to try to improve? Oh, I'm supposed to practice? I'm supposed to... And so it was because of the two of them, this juncture, the two of them, that I really started to understand about becoming self-motivated, about trying to, work harder and improve, and, good enough is not good enough. Was the other big lesson I learned from Tony. And then she set me on my path because, university towns, right, everybody's always coming and going. So I studied with her for 2 years, and then she and her family were leaving. And we were doing our last class at the women's gym. I guess it's called policy now. Anyway, at the women's gym. And she said, I want you to go on with this. I want to read about you one day. And I said, okay. I'm going to do it. So I was 12 years old. And so that really, she set me on my path. And so I was determined also to become a ballet dancer because of her and because of what I learned from her. And but in the meantime, Alvin Ailey came to town. And I have to say, I wasn't inspired yet, the first time I saw the company, to stop with my ballet dream and desire. My mother had this fear that she was harboring, that I was going to have my heart broken, because again, you didn't really see black people in ballet, especially classical ballet companies. And so she never expressed it to me overtly, but this was her, background noise, is that this is just going to be a disaster. But then, so I went to Interlochen. I was always being encouraged by people, all along my path. And there was a wonderful teacher that was teaching ballet during my junior year of high school, and said, you should go to Interlochen. So, and it's so weird, because I decided I wanted to be a dancer, but I didn't really think about how I was going to get there. I was just going to sit at home in Iowa City and become a dancer somehow. So I went to Interlochen. She encouraged me to go, and I went to Interlochen, and it was there that I learned that I could kind of compete on the national stage, that I wasn't just a big fish. And so my dream became more powerful. And then my father took me to see Alvin Ailey after that summer. And it was then that I saw Revelations, which I didn't see when I first saw the company. And that's when I said, oh.
Now I understand.
Point shoes. Arrivederci. I want to do that. And so that was, dance-wise, that's how the Ailey Company affected me, but also in terms of, as a Black person, rewinding to when they came to town and performed at Hancher, and I took a master class. And although, I wasn't so keen on modern dance, but, so now this is around 1972, 73, and so we're coming through civil rights, and we're, Martin Luther King had been assassinated, but there's also, the thing in the Black community about like Black power, and we need to stand up for ourselves, and we need to have our own, and we need to really embrace ourselves. And but that was gonna mean that's gonna have to deny all my friends, all my white friends, that I could only be with Black people now. That wasn't what I wanted. I wanted to have like Martin Luther King said, like the beautiful community. The beloved community. That was always in my heart, that we can all be together and share our lives together. And so this was not attracted to me either, and it was so strident and angry, and understandably so, but that wasn't my lived experience. So I couldn't really relate. But then the Ailey Company came to town, and I always say it's like Wakanda rolled up into Iowa City, and here were these people, and they were just gorgeous, and they were self-assured, and they were erudite, and they were generous, and they were artists, and they were doing art, not the thing that they, that we were being shown on TV. Like, these were people that knew their worth and knew their value and could share that. And that's when I remember, like, after they left, I went and finally got my hair cut in an afro. Like, that's when I leaned into being Black. Like, I decided I'm claiming this now. And it wasn't like an inconvenient aspect of me, but this is something I wanted to own because of the Alvin Ailey American Dance Theater. So even before I became a dancer there, I was very, very much profoundly changed by the interaction I had with them as people.
And I mean, if I may take the liberty to kind of braid some of these things that I'm hearing, right? It's a rootedness in your home, in your community. It's a commitment to mentorship, right? It's this understanding of a home place and care. And you found that in Ailey, right? And it wasn't abandoning who you were and growing up in Iowa and that Black Midwestern experience. And it wasn't kind of muscular masculinism of the Black Panther Party or other kind of Black power movements. It was something that authentically represented kind of the beauty of that experience, and that was being fed to you as a young girl in this community, that you were capable and that you were bright and that you could do so much more.
Yes. And the multiculturalism that existed within the company was very important to me, that I wasn't going to have to give up what was important to me as a human being to be able to move in this community. But and it wasn't just interracial, right? There were Asians, there were Latinos, like Alvin had everyone in the company, and so it looked like what my dream, my ideal of what a world could be. And I think this is why the Ailey Company still moves people to this day, because it's an illustration of the incredible potential that we have as human beings to be able to, enjoy each other.
And I mean, and you had, a very successful career as a dancer, but while you were doing that, you yourself are kind of bringing these ideas forward, right? So deep in, the Ailey Company's kind of ethos is the Sankofa principle, right? The Sankofa bird is always I always think it's like a sassy bird, because it's like, hey, but it's this idea that you're looking back to go forward, right? So you're drawing back on your experiences from Iowa to go forward. The mentors who helped you and grew, right? You helped founded the Ailey Camp, right? And this is for young people to experience dance and everything that comes through dance, not just the technique, not just the movement and the art form, but all of the kind of accompanying things. And where was the very first Ailey Camp founded?
Kansas City, Missouri.
Not New York, and not San Francisco. Kansas City. Missouri, right? In the Midwest. Can you share a little bit how you got involved with that and how that kind of is this moment of kind of, convergence or, yeah.
At the time, I was dancing with Lar Lubavitch, who has a wonderful modern dance company. Actually, I don't think he's an alumnus per se because he didn't graduate from here, but he was studying art here at the University of Iowa. He's from Chicago and studying art here and was exposed to dance here, saw the Jose Limon company, and his life was changed. But anyway, so I was dancing with his company, and also I'd started practicing Buddhism in the group that I practice with. There's a tremendous emphasis on youth and developing youth and enabling youth to really understand their incredible potential, and create this. So Ailey Camp was started. There's a school in Kansas City that was kind of like a last stop for kids with truancy problems. And so the Ailey Company always, wherever we go, but we had developed a nice relationship with Kansas City, and Kansas City Friends of Alvin Ailey was created there, kind of this organic partnership that happened. And so they would sponsor a lot of activities, and so there were a lot of teaching in the schools and all this stuff. Our former artistic director, Judith Jamison, always likes to say that we were doing arts and ed before it was called arts and ed. We were just, because Mr. Ailey felt that dance came from the people and should always be delivered back to the people. So along with performances, there's a very strong component of community activities. Anyway, so we just did what we did. They taught a master class, a couple of workshops in this school, but the teachers noticed afterwards that even with this kind of very limited exposure, that the kids were having kind of a different sense of insight about what they were reading, and making more insightful comments and incisive comments. And they were thinking, wow, if this could happen like in an hour and a half, what could happen if they were exposed to it longer? And so Mr. Ailey and Denise Jefferson, the director of the Ailey School, and Carol Feinberg, an educational consultant, along with the board members of the Kansas City Friends of Alvin Ailey, decided to apply for a grant and see what would happen if we could just throw a bunch of kids in together with some professional dancers and see what happens. And so Ailey Camp was given a grant by the Gannett Outdoors Foundation, those big billboards, as a 2-year pilot project to work with professional dancers. And again, the end goal was not to train them to be dancers, but just to help them as human beings, using dance as the vehicle, as the language, because through dance we learn how to be self-motivated eventually, how to delay gratification. You're not going to get it right away. How to develop the ability to work in groups, how to become self-disciplined, like all these basic life skills that we could just kind of thread through the language of dance. And they also had creative writing classes and personal development classes where they could really, talk about what's going on at that time. It's for middle school kids, so, that raging hormone group. Where they're, on the cusp of so many things. I love middle schoolers. I think they're fascinating and exciting. They're still idealistic, so you can get in there with them and, create some ideas. And so put it together, and who knew? I mean, they had to put this grant together in like 2 months, and then they got the approval, and they're like, oh no, now we got to do this, so hired. They felt it was important for them to hire like dancers that were still performing, because there's a different kind of immediacy to the work. No matter what. The curtain's going up at 8 o'clock, so you better have everything together. You better have, everything you need, have worked on all of it, because there's not, fluffy time. You'd have to be ready to produce and deliver every day. And so there's a different kind of drive behind that as opposed to a teacher that has more time. I love teachers. I think, teaching is an art form no matter what. So it was just the viewpoint that they wanted. So did that for a couple of years, and then we decided to open a camp in Iowa City, in New York. And the joy of it, again, is, long story short, is that it gave me the opportunity to really put my ideals into place. The Ailey organization was already a tremendous platform. There was no divergence in terms of philosophy, in terms of, what dance can do for people, that it's always people-centered. All of his works are people-centered. If you see Mr. Ailey's works, they're about the people that he grew up around. And he wanted to bring these people who had not been represented on the stage to the stage. And he wanted to bring these people and have them represented in a way that was affectionate, in a way that was respectful, in a way that really highlighted their dignity, that highlighted their humanity, and felt like these stories needed to be told as part of the American canon, which is also why he called the company the Alvin Ailey American Dance Theater, not the African American Dance Theater, because this is American history that needs to be seen from this particular angle, this particular part of the prism. And so everything that he stood for, we could really put together and present to the kids in the program, to be able to have them come up with different ideas for themselves. That your background, although Sankofa is important, but it doesn't have to be the determinative factor in who you are. And I've had the privilege of watching the camp expand to 10 cities over the country, and there's camps in Berkeley and in Chicago, and kids went to the camp in Berkeley was on the UC Berkeley campus, so they were on campus, and so there were kids that ended up going to Berkeley because it was a natural progression. I've already been here. I've seen myself in this space. I can imagine myself. So it doesn't always have to be about seeing representation. No, I have my lived experience here. I know I belong here. And so creating that kind of humanistic dialogue on so many different, from so many different angles is what makes me so proud to be part of this Ailey organization, because it is about the dance, but it's so much more than that.
And I just want to amplify this point just a bit more. Before we go to audience Q&A. I mean, we're preaching to the choir, right? We're here with hearing an artist talk about her craft. You all jumped at the chance to get another free book. We're in an art museum. Y'all get it, and thank you for getting it, right? And you speak so passionately and with such excellent evidence to the effect that arts education can have on individuals. I'm always just so reluctant, like this idea to sing for your supper, to constantly try to explain why arts are important, why humanity is important, why we matter. Well, quite frankly, at a funeral, right? Does anybody put up an Excel spreadsheet? Right, to explain why we're gonna miss Joe? No, they play Joe's favorite song. They read from Joe's favorite poetry, right? This is the stuff of our lives. This is what makes us human. And I'd like to hear more about you talking about the impact that the Ailey Company and other arts have, not only on building community, but building our society, these democratic societies that foster the arts. What is this relationship? Yeah, spreadsheet, right?
Yeah. I think, so there's an anecdote that somebody shared with me, and then an anecdote that I witnessed myself that speaks to the importance of art and what the real purpose is, right? It's not we do these things because we're good at them or whatever, but this is how we are reminded of our common bonds as human beings. And the first anecdote I will share is that a friend of mine, I was kind of like I was pouting about, I don't know, something. I was mad at the anyway. I was over the Ailey Company for, whatever reason that day, and this friend of mine said, but this is it. This is the thing about the Ailey Company. Like, when you come in, you see all kinds of races here. You see every little bit of everybody here. And you don't see that everywhere. And then if you look a little closer, you see all different ages among all these different races. And you don't see that everywhere. And then they dance, everybody dances, and then the curtain comes down, and everybody rushes out to the lobby, and they gotta talk to each other about it, And you don't see that everywhere, And it's because there's this truth, this universal truth, and I think that dance is really suited to this in such a great way because we're not limited by words. We can just express pure emotion, and we can, and as human beings, as living beings, we are all having motion. That's the first sign of life, right? Is motion. So this is something that binds us all into whatever the movement is trying to convey, or, there's a visual aspect to dance, there's an emotional aspect to dance, there's a musical aspect to dance, there's a rhythmic aspect to dance that I think is very holistic. And so I think that people can just come and enjoy, and whether you understand the story or not, if there is a story, that there's something to be touched by. All the senses can be involved when you're at a dance performance. And so there's that part, I think, and the Ailey Company, I think what makes us special is that, again, it's this idea of celebrating the human experience. We're not going to shy away from the difficulties, but at the end of the day, we're going to celebrate the human experience. We have such a short time to be on this earth together, or even at all. And so life is to be celebrated. And somebody was asking one of my mentors, or she was actually saying that one of her mentors was saying, you need to go be with the Ailey Company. Like, why is the Ailey Company so successful when there are many, many talented choreographers here? Many, many same topics were being addressed. But the thing that Mr. Ailey kept bringing forth through all this was joy and hope and belief and faith, not just religious faith, but faith in us as human beings, that that comes across the footlights, and is part of what we do. So there was that. So the first little anecdote. Then the second anecdote that I realized, the importance of what we do is after 9/11. So we always perform at Christmas time. It's in New York. And we were still in a deep sense of shock and mourning with what had happened in our city. And people weren't coming to New York anymore. People were nervous about getting on a plane. And we're there at holiday time, and things just weren't the same. And another dance company, I'll say it, American Ballet Theater, performed in our theater about 3 weeks before our season was supposed to start. And they were performing to houses that were maybe a third full. Like, people were just not coming out. We were still wounded. And so we were like, oh God, what's going to happen? This is our cash cow, city center, what are we going to do? But when we opened, and that season, every performance was sold out. Every performance was packed to the gills. And you could see, there was a sense of purpose that people were coming to see the Ailey Company. That wasn't like, oh, it's 2 o'clock, and there's a matinee over here, maybe we can swing by, and then we'll go to American Girl's store or whatever afterwards. People were coming coming to see Ailey on purpose because they wanted to feel better, and they wanted to believe again in this potential that we have. And I'd always, I'd talk about what art can do and how it can uplift us all, and but I never felt it the same way until that day. Until that season, when you could see that people needed to be encouraged, and they came to our theater to get that nourishment. And so, as you say, it's all those things, and even for negative things, like people, you rev yourself up with music. You watch all those war movies. There's always this music going on, yeah. Right? There's always something, besides the stats and the facts and the figures that. We need to move the human spirit, and that is what art is about.
What a beautiful answer. Thank you so much for that. Right on. I will open it up to all of you and your infinite brilliance. And again, what a joy to be in this space. And thank you, Ronni, for your candor and your just being such a wonderful ambassador for the city, for your craft, for the Ailey Company. Great. So open to all of you. Questions?
Except high school friends can't ask questions. No embarrassing questions.
Please submit your questions in writing for pre-approval. High school friends. I was like, did anybody go to high school with me in here? That's right. Also,
we gotta shut it down. Or friends of my mother.
Oh.
There you go. So 2 people can ask questions here, I think.
Oh, here. Let me give you the mic. It's okay. What would you suggest a young person does that wants to pursue dance?
So the question on the floor is, what would you suggest to a young person who wants to pursue dance?
Couple of things. First of all, it's really important to have a mentor. It's very important to have a mentor. I was fortunate to have encountered some, but I also think that it's incumbent upon the person to seek out a mentor. And when you find that person, then you get up their butt. And you don't let go until you have every question answered, until you are fulfilled. I mean, it's a very, very intense relationship. But the mentor-student, mentor-disciple relationship is about the growth of the student. And so the mentor is pouring like everything into this person for that person to be able to, go beyond their own ideas of themselves. And it's the responsibility of the student, of the disciple, to prove the truth, prove the veracity of what the mentor has taught. So it's a very, very tight relationship. And the other thing I would say, and I think this is another benefit of being connected with the Ailey organization, is beyond, yes, study, do all, like work like a dog, all those things, but I think it's also important to attach yourself to a mission that's larger than yourself. And I say that because there's such hard times, and if you are just concerned about myself and my welfare and, if something disturbs that, then everything is lost. But when you have a sense of mission, a sense of purpose, a sense of something larger, a responsibility to your fellow human beings, then that enables you to be able to go through the hard times, because you keep your eye on that North Star about what I'm really trying to do, where I'm trying to go, how and this part of the path is impeded. So how can I find a workaround? And so you're able to develop your creativity in many other ways, that only serves to develop you as an artist. You have to love it, especially you have to be, like Sue Ann Saldofsky, you have to rather dance or whatever it is, fill in the blank. You have to want to do that more than you want to breathe, in order to really stay steadfast along that path. And yeah, I had the opportunity to teach one of Mr. Ailey's works to a ballet company, and we had some donors come in, and then I was speaking about the Ailey company and what we do and what we think, and and the dancers afterwards were like, "Oh my goodness, I never thought of dance that way. I never thought," and I realized that this is, such a great benefit of, this man's vision, that he's been able to imbue that vision into all of us that are part of the Ailey organization, that it's about bringing dance back to the people. And we are going to bring excellence to the people. And so I need to become excellent so that I can deliver excellence back. It's not just about me and for my own sake. And so I would encourage any young person that's really wanting to pursue that to also look bigger than just your pure desire. That's obviously very important, but the more that you can expand your vision about what it is you're trying to do, how you're trying to contribute, how to lead a contributive life through your life as an artist, become a citizen. Like we're talking about being citizen artists now. How can we contribute? I think that's so important. And Mr. Ailey said to me during my first, I guess it's my kind of evaluation when I was in second company, and I have really tight muscles and stuff, and Mr. Ailey always loved like high extensions, really, very flexible, and I can dance, but I don't,
No doubt.
I didn't have all that, and so I was always, feeling, stressed out about it. So I had my first evaluation with him, and he said, "You need to get out of the studio." And I looked at him like he had not only 8 to 12 heads. It's like, what are you talking talking about? How am I going to improve? How am I going to, you have this whole dialogue going in my head about, he said, you need to get out and you need to go and, fall in love and get your heart broken and go and make mistakes and meet people and read things. And, I'm like, what is he talking about? Is he crazy? And then he finished up, he said, because you cannot dance about dance. You have to dance about life. And so you can't dance about life if you don't have one.
Right.
So that's the other thing I strongly, not even encourage, just, insist that you have to, experience all of it. You can't be tunnel visioned, even though it requires tunnel vision, but you still have to make sure that you're doing all of the other things in order to really fully be able to bring yourself to the stage so that, as Mr. Ailey said, what I'm trying to do is hold up a mirror to society so that people can see how beautiful they are. And so you have to fully inhabit your own life to be able to bring that to the stage so that someone else can recognize the commonality.
Beautiful, excellent. I see a couple of questions.
So someone preemptively raised their hand, so I'm going to go here first.
Did you guys? Go ahead. Okay. I just wanted to ask you, because I heard you say that your parents were from the South and they came to the Midwest. And I'm just kind of wondering, what was that relationship like for them? And, how did it color sort of the way that you perceived what it was like to be in the Midwest as a Black person?
Well, as I said, they were very intentional about coming here. And it's interesting, we lived in these little pockets. So our house was, my parents' friends groups were always multiracial, multilingual, just everything. We deaf people, French people, white people, everybody was always part of our friend group. And same thing when we came to Iowa City. And so it's funny, I was thinking about that this morning actually, that I'm sure they had a lot of trepidation growing up in the South in the 30s, extreme, like my mother's an amazing seamstress, right? And I always thought, just because she, that's what she does, and that, but I didn't know that she's an amazing seamstress, as were all people of her generations, because they either couldn't go into the stores to buy clothes, or if they did, they were humiliated and treated like shit. And so as a defense, they all learned how to sew themselves. You go and look at the stores, and you go home and create this stuff. But they never, ever imparted any of that fear or that underlying, you have to have some resentment. None of that ever came through as I was growing up. I'm very fortunate that I think they were intentional about creating the kind of community and the kind of world, the idealistic world that we all wanted. And so that's all I was ever exposed to. And there was never a sense of, other Black people I've talked to have felt like a sense of displacement or, still otherness. But I never felt that, and they never hinted at that. And I know they felt it because my mother talks about it a lot now. And all of the things that were going on, or just, her ideas about it, but it was never part of my growing up. I did one thing because my parents, as I said, they met in Atlanta, and there's a big Fox Theater, right? We're Gone with the Wind was premiered, and that's where we perform. The Ailey Company performs when we're in Atlanta, and so if you go to the backstage door, like the front of the house is here, like the lobby is here, and everybody comes in here, and if you go around this way, and then up over here, there's like a set of stairs on the outside of the building that you have to go up to get into the balcony, and that's where the Black people that was the colored section, and that's how you got into the lobby. That's how you got into the theater. Rain, shine, hot, whatever, this is how you, and so last year my mother said, can you do me a favor? Can you go into the Fox Theater through the lobby for me? Because I've never gone into the Fox Theater through the lobby. And so I went in, And, the people are like, what do you, I work here. Well, then go through, I promised my mother I was coming in the lobby on her behalf. And they were like, oh, yes, of course. And they ushered me in and, took pictures and all this. So, like those things happened and they were very real, but they were never part of my awareness even. They just wanted to give me a clean slate. I also think, because my parents were very young when I was born, they were 21. So I think there was, like when you're that age, everything's towards the future, towards the future, towards the future. And so they weren't looking back because who would want to, right? So everything was towards creation.
I'd say we have time for one more question. Okay.
First, your parents sound like remarkable people.
Thank you.
So my question is about interdisciplinary collaboration that Mr. Ailey sort of set forth in terms of collaboration with artists, collaborations with musicians, which I think is, and I'm just curious if you can talk about why that was so important to him and the ways it manifested itself during his life and maybe has manifested itself since he passed and the company continues to run.
He started his dance career with the Lester Horton Dance Theater. And Lester Horton was already kind of working in a multidisciplinary way. His company was multiracial. He created works, just really a lot of eclectic influences in terms of they were studying Balinese dance, they were studying classical Indian dance, they were just studying everything. And he also made sure that everyone in his company was able to do everything. So they were building the sets, they were making the costumes, they were designing everything. So it was a very hands-on experience for everyone in the Lester Horton Dance Theater. And Alvin was just like always a very curious, just restlessly curious person. And moved to San Francisco for a while to study there. He was never able to stay in one place very long. Ended up creating a little duet dance group with Maya Angelou. The two of them danced together as dance partners, then came back, did this, studied, Romance languages, just was kind of like all over the place. So I think he was just the type that wanted to pull from as many influences as possible. And when he was a kid, he found his way into some speakeasy where Billie Holiday was, and I also, I think as a kid also he saw Catherine Dunham's company on stage, and this is another based in Caribbean dance that if you don't know, but also a lot of pageantry involved in all of her productions. And I think that was also very influential to him in terms of his vision and how he wanted his stage to be. And it was very intentional that he called it the Alvin Ailey Dance Theater, so emphasis on theater. So again, with pieces that had narratives, but also different types of music. I think another part of his raison d'etre was to be a repertory company, because in modern dance, like most ballet companies are repertory companies, yes, where you dance, you'll do Swan Lake by this person and this by this, but most modern dance companies only did the choreography of the founder. But when Alvin was coming up, and this is his genius and his great generosity, he was always kind of looking for ways to fill holes that existed. He wanted to have people of color be able to be on the concert dance stage. Because there was a hole here, there was a gap, there were stories that weren't being told. Then, at the same time, while he was creating his company, there were a lot of people. It was very fertile during the late 50s, in the dance community. But nobody had the money to really do more than one show. So there were amazing works of art that were being created and lost, repeatedly. And so he formed a company to be a repertory company so that we could be a repository for great modern dance works of art. And that just then brings in, the different kind of musicians that people are going to be using and working with. And so there was always this cross-pollination that was going on throughout from the time that the company began. Well, God. They asked the
I
hard
was
questions.
Yeah, I was like, and so that concludes this wonderful, wonderful conversation with the incredible, incomparable, just humble and gracious Ronni Favors. Thank you. It's
Thank you so
truly
much.
a highlight of my career to be in conversation with you. If you don't have them yet, and I think there are some still available, the company, the Alvin Ailey Company, is performing at the Hancher on Tuesday at 7 o'clock. There's also lots of programming going on because, again, dance is of the people and for the people. So they're performing for Iowa City school students and all across the city. So please do take the opportunity to see one of the gems of American culture, the Alvin Ailey American Dance Company. So thank you again to
Thank you,
Ronni.
Ash.
And
Thank you
thank
so
you to
much.
all of you.
I want to add a big thank you to you too, Ashley. Thank you so much for just, steering this conversation, this very powerful conversation. Thank you so much. And of course, Ronni, thank you. I know I'll see you all on Tuesday because I will be there and I'll be looking for you all. Thank you again so, so much. Have a wonderful rest of your Sunday.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. It means a lot to be able to, share and celebrate my hometown that's been so important to me and so much a part of who I am. So I'm really happy to be able to speak about my experience here because it's been my treasure.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.